Everybody. It's always rather daunting to be speaking in a session entitled Inspiring, and it's also rather daunting to have to tell you about my now rather long life in farming, food, retail and hospitality in 10 minutes. Anyway, we'll do what we can. I think I must be one of the luckiest people in the world. I always wanted to farm, not least to show that girls could, at a time when few did, or certainly when few of them had their names over the door. There's been many women obviously involved in family farms over the generations, but often they didn't get the credit for the work they put in on the farm. I spent my childhood tagging around after Dad on the farm and in the markets. He was a great market man, and catching rabbits and rats with my brother for pocket money. I had the opportunity to farm, which so few have. So that was the first part of my luck. Then Dad gave me full control of the farm business when I was only 24, fresh out of Harper. What an extraordinary thing to do. Especially as I was already set to kick over the traces. From my early teens, I'd been disturbed by the way wildlife on the farm was vanishing. I was embarrassed by the disparity between our lives and the lives of our farm staff. And I was outraged by the abuse of pigs and poultry in the supposedly state-of-the-art units that we were taken to as part of my degree. I wanted to do it differently from so many angles, and organic was the road I chose. Another piece of luck was the year I spent as my industrial placement in the ADAS soils team as the research student on the first government-funded trial on the differences between organic and conventional farming systems. I learned more during that year than through the whole of my degree. Knowledge that should have been a core part of my agricultural education, but wasn't. Is it now, I wonder? I fear not, actually, for the most part. So organic it was to be, not because I was convinced it was the entire solution, but learning to farm without all the inputs that sales reps were trying to convince me would solve all of my problems seemed like a sensible place to start. It would stretch me, like an athlete deciding to see how fast she can run without the drugs. Another strong driver for me was independence, as a woman and as a farmer. Not independence as sort of proud isolation, but a desire not to be just a cog in someone else's wheel. Not to rely on global commodity markets or cap support, which I assumed would go soon anyway. So it wasn't just about the farming. We had to find ways to sell things too. There was a fledgling market for organic milk. We had 2 dairies, though it wasn't until the formation of OMSCO, the organic milk cooperative that we were involved with from the earliest days, that we had a reliable premium. Organic cereals were always in demand and the mainstay of profitability of our business in the early days. There's still a massive trade gap on organic cereals and protein crops if anyone's looking for an opportunity today. But the market for organic meat in the mid-late 80s was pretty non-existent. So that's where we largely concentrated our efforts. People often ask if it's our marketing ventures that have made our farming viable. But to be honest, our efforts beyond the farm gate have been a complete roller coaster, far more than the farming's been. We've sold our wares in just about every way possible over the decades. We've run butcher shops, started a mail order business in the late 80s, far too ahead of its time. We concentrated for quite a while on independent stores and restaurants until our financial reporting caught up with our entrepreneurial enthusiasm, and we realized that hardly any of it was washing its face. We helped start a meat co-op, undertook an ambitious joint venture, sold burgers and bacon butties through a small fleet of vans at music festivals and sporting events. We've run factories until we realized we were terrible at it, exported and worked with overseas partners, and taken on our village pub when we were bored for 5 minutes. Now that's a really mad thing to do. People always want to either be farmers or publicans. They're both bonkers. We've had good spells and appalling ones. The latter often triggered by animal diseases. Foot and mouth nearly finished us off twice. Through it all, we stuck to our guns on organic farming and to selling as much as we could under our own brand. When my partner Tim joined the business from his career in agricultural journalism, he was convinced that it needed to be my name on the product. And so it has been for over 20 years. I'm just getting used to it. We refreshed the brand last year, which led to a, thankfully short, period of navel-gazing as to what we stand for. There are many aspects, of course, but for our strapline, we landed on the old adage that I'd quoted far too often over the years, which does sum up our take on life. Live as though you will die tomorrow, farm as though you will live forever. Despite the worries of our own little world on the farm, or far more importantly, the crises facing mankind today, I find it impossible not to revel in every day spent on this extraordinary planet. The joy of being on the land, the fun to be had with family and friends, or for me, best of all, just alone, walking the farm. Being a young female, doing something different in farming and marketing, and having to make it all work commercially, because we're tenant farmers, that was always essential, meant that I was invited into the world of agri-politics very quickly too. Again, so fortunate to have the chance to sit on commissions and committees, to learn something about how the wider world works, to bring my practical experience to the table. And this all led to my life with the Soil Association, the charity which supports organic and ecological farming, food and forestry, and tries to make it possible for great practice to be properly rewarded. I've been a trustee, then chair, then director of food and farming, and now chief exec for the last 9 years. This is a pretty full-on job, so my farming and food businesses are rather neglected, and life, to say the least, is a bit of a juggling act. Luckily, again, I have great people everywhere around me, at the Soil Association and at home, including a wonderful daughter and son-in-law who now contract manage the new dairy we've established, another bonkers thing, perhaps some people might say, plus the dairy beef enterprise and their own flock of 1,200 ewes. She's just qualified as a vet, so it seems that something about overfilling one's life is running in the family. I sort of manage the other dairy, calves, 200 saddleback sows and their progeny, some cereals, and keep an eye on the marketing business, our mini hotel dining pub on the farm, and our restaurant in Swindon. But the hospitality side of things is very much Tim's baby. We've also got an embryonic wildlife photography and Eastbrook experiences business to keep hotels and other guests entertained. And in the last few years, I've been able to indulge my latent interest in trees and agroforestry on a bit of land that I now own. We've got timber trees, trees for biomass, nuts, top and soft fruit, and peri pears too on a larger scale with livestock grazing between the rows. I need half an hour just to tell you about that, I'm afraid, but we haven't got time for that today. So what to take from all this madness? Well, not that it's a success in the usual sense of the word. It's messy, erratically profitable and unprofitable. Sometimes it seems miraculous that we've survived at all. But maybe survival is itself success in the farming and food world. And for me, success is about the number of people our land and business sustain, the community we create, the fun we have, along with some tears. It's about the wildlife returning, piglets playing, people walking the farm and loving it almost as much as I do. It's about planting trees that I will never see mature. It's about preparing the way for the next generation, creating a special place which may inspire others, be they policymakers, farmers, or the public. It's about doing the best we can with the gifts we're given. Now, if anyone wants a deeper delve into all this madness, then the book I wrote with Tim last year explores it all a bit more. But thank you.